Ryder Carroll is best known for inventing bullet journaling, a practice which transforms any notebook into a place for mindfulness, productivity, and note-making. But what you might not know is how Ryder combines this system with this one, his digital world.
I need something to help me remember all the things that resonate with me. My second brain is just a way of making sure that my good ideas remain tucked away somewhere that I can access them.
Tiago sat down with Ryder and got him to reveal all the ways he structures his second brain, the physical and digital system that guides his personal and creative life. But first, what is a bullet journal?
I like to think of it as a mindfulness practice that's disguised as a productivity system. So I kind of have this rule where anything that comes into my mind goes right into the notebook, and then I can figure out where to put it later.
Every time you ask yourself, where does this go? You have the answer. You just bring in your notebook and it's always compatible.
It's this idea of not having to worry about where your thoughts go.
And then the paper notebook is just the physical manifestation of that philosophy.
Yeah, it's basically the tool we use to execute a way of thinking.
A bullet journal is created by recording your notes as bullets in any blank journal.
In bullet journal, we have different kinds of bullet points, right? We have tasks, events, and notes. But that way I can very quickly skim the margin of the page to see, like, what do I have to do? What are the action steps here? What are things that I want to look into? It's a visual guide to help me quickly engage with the content that I'm writing faster.
You can add bullets under topic headers, such as your daily log, the place to record whatever matters from that day. You don't plan your bullet journal ahead of time. Instead, you let it happen organically and write on whatever page is next in your journal.
Part of the whole methodology is you just turn the page and begin right then.
Instead of pre-deciding all the sections, which may or may not be correct, you're almost making it linear to make that decision of where to put it easier. Let's say the example of you're reading a book just for curiosity, just for personal reasons, and you find something that you want to write down. What does it concretely look like?
When it comes to reading a book specifically, I create this thing called a collection, which, as its name suggests, is a place where you collect related information. In this case, it would be notes about this book. So when I sit down with a book, I will turn to this collection, and then that's where I'm going to start making my notes. In Bujo, we have this thing called the index, where basically you write down all the names of your collections. So later on, I can be like, okay, on page 35 is where all my notes about this book. For the way that I do it, each book is one collection.
If it's the first note that you're taking on a book, are you turning just to the next available blank page and starting a new collection for that book right there?
Yeah, you're basically spinning up functionality in your own notebook. It's like, okay, now I'm going to create a collection for monitoring how much water I drink. I'm going to spin up a collection for the book that I'm reading.
It kind of gives you this way to elevate what is always just some text on a page into a more permanent kind of evergreen long-term thing.
Something that we can also continue throughout notebooks. Like some people will have collections for their mental health, for example, so they can monitor how they're feeling or where their thoughts are going, and then you can see where that was 2-3 years ago. Collection is something that can persist over time.
For Ryder's work process, he takes notes in his bullet journal while making highlights directly on Kindle.
When it comes to work, I literally just sit down with my iPad, Kindle app, have my notebook next to me, and get to work. What happens when Ryder is reading this book? That's what ends up in my notebook. What does my mind generate when it interfaces with this information?
There's a collision. The collision of this author's mind with Ryder's mind.
Yes.
There's a spark that happens right there.
This allows him to take digital notes that can move on to the next stage of the process, as well as physical ones which may or may not move on to the next stage.
I delineate between taking and making notes. The notes that I take, which is highlighting, that I'll do in my Kindle. I read everything on Kindle. I highlight a lot, I know. I highlight way too much. I have a highlighting problem, but I also ruthlessly edit my highlights after.
True to form, when he's reading for the joy of it and not just reading something for work, Ryder will choose physical books over digital ones every time.
There's something much more sensual about them. I like the way they smell. I like the way they feel. There's also something about the progress that you're making, and also I have a background as a designer, so actually seeing the way that what font face they picked and the way the book's laid out, the weight of it, there's just something about the physicality that I love.
You differentiate between reading modes. I think this is super important. There's so many reasons to read, situations in which you read, moods or states of mind that you're in. You have completely different almost setups. One, you're in bed, winding down. I'm guessing it's more reflective, more open-ended. One, you're You're like trying to find something. You're like seeking, hunting for the solution to your problem. It couldn't be more different.
Not everything in Ryder's world is analog. There's a digital side to things too.
Just digital lives in digital. I feel like that's a simple rule. Trying to make it analog and then digital is not. I don't want to do that round tripping. That doesn't make sense. URLs and things like that, when they're links to things that I have to check out, I'm not writing a URL in my notebook. If I run into an article, I used to copy and paste the link to the article in my daily note. Actually, thanks to your class, now I actually right click and put it right in a matter. So thank you for that. That was an optimization. Links, bookmarks, all that kind of stuff will go into Roam. I love photography, and I also use photography as a way to take notes in some ways, like, oh, I want to remember this moment. All photos would go into Apple Photos, into my camera roll. What I've started doing recently, and the jury's still out, is I actually open the Notes app, and then one of the ways to log is by taking a picture. So I don't import anything, I just take the picture right away.
This is a photo as note.
More and more often, Ryder will get his most creative ideas on walks, where he'll dictate voice memos to himself.
A lot of my thinking happens when I walk, so I will figure out the topic of what it is that I want to explore, and then I just start talking about it as I'm walking. At some point, my rambling will actually turn into something coherent. I use a program called Otter, and Otter allows me to dictate and it transcribes automatically. And then I'll say keywords. I'll be like highlight or focus or something. So then when I search it later, I can see where it started making sense and I can just like delete everything before that.
That's brilliant. They're like voice tags. And how does that highlight get into Roam, which I think is your note-taking app of choice?
That goes through Readwise.
For someone who doesn't know what Readwise is, I struggle with this myself. How would you describe Readwise?
Readwise, it's an app that takes content from one platform and pipes it into another platform that's specifically targeted for research and reading. So I tag everything as inbox, essentially.
Okay.
So for books, I use Kindle. For articles, I use Matter, and both of those end up in Roam, in my Roam inbox, which will then be processed later.
The Readwise app goes to each of Ryder's digital inputs and automatically pushes them into Roam, a digital notes app preferred by the Gardner-style note-taking archetype.
A lot of our organization is artificial, I feel like, right? We don't think this way. We don't think in folder structures. We don't think like that at all. And it's like, especially with creatives, like, I don't think in folder hierarchies and like that kind of thing. I don't either. That's kind of what Roam is. Like, I don't need to organize it. And that's what I love about it.
In Roam, note-takers create pages, which are linked together by tags and page links.
For me, the biggest thing is just like the wiki links, like backlinks, and transclusion and all that stuff, like being able to very quickly connect the dots. That's why I use it.
When Ryder's digital notes come into Roam, they're tagged to the inbox page where they can be reviewed.
I don't have to think about what is going to go into Roam. Everything goes into Roam, and then I have this inbox. And then I will hit the inbox tag, and everything that's inbox will be there, and then I spend time every day processing. Like, I have dedicated time to writing every day, and for me, processing my Roam is considered writing. And that's the inbox, and I just process my inbox as it goes down.
So for you in Roam, inbox is a tag. Those notes could be located wherever. They could have come in through whatever means, but when you do a search for inbox, it's telling you everything that has come in that needs some further processing.
But how do the notes and thoughts that Ryder takes in his bullet journal make their way into Roam?
We have regular rituals, essentially a daily ritual, weekly ritual, and a monthly ritual, which is where we go back and reflect on the things that we've written, and then we get rid of stuff that no longer adds any value, find a home for the things that do. During the day, I'm just capturing, and then in the evening, I'm trying to actually figure out where these things have to live. And oftentimes they just stay in my notebook because they're for me, but if they don't, Google Calendar, Clarity, that kind of thing, I find a home for them, and then I will mark them as migrated inside my notebook. Not everything goes in from my notebook into Roam, because I can read it later and be like, half these notes are not interesting.
You're using the lack of time, the lack of interest that you may have in something, not as these enemies, but every step of the process, cut, 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 so that less and less makes it towards the end.
I have to be structured in the way that I input things, but I want to do it in a way where I can just freely think. I want to make a mess and not have to think about it.
Once everything that needs to be is in Roam, Ryder will process his inbox and highlights, organizing them into their respective pages and projects.
The way that I process notes is kind of asynchronous in general, so I prioritize my inbox based on my interest. I have to crank out this article for something that I'm writing, and I have 5 articles in my inbox related to that. they are prioritized. When I go through highlights, the same thing happens. Many of them don't make sense anymore out of context. So I quickly just skim the highlights and just start deleting highlights en masse. Like, no, interesting, no, interesting. And I just try to get through it as fast as I can. So I'll do like a first pass, and then I'll go through the ones that remain. And then I actually start doing the, what's it called?
Progressive summarization.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that you have a term for it, progressive summarization.
I try to not make people have to say that if they don't, unless they want to.
Progressive summarization is a building a second brain core technique you can use to distill your notes. Anytime you read a quotation that resonates with you, immediately capture it in your second brain. Then, next time that you revisit the note, you bold the words that stick out most upon rereading it. If you visit the note a third time, you highlight keywords out of the section that you already bolded. Eventually, you'll be able to identify just the most important information in your second brain, the phrases and ideas that resonate most with you.
The way I have my Roam set up is that I can actually filter by highlights. So my book will only surface the things that I highlighted within my highlights. What did I find to be most important? So it'd be like 5 or 6 things really quickly.
Items are moved from the inbox as needed into specialized pages where Ryder starts to distill his creative work in the form of outlines.
Okay, this is actually fun. It depends on where I am in the process of writing. So it's like, I want to write this thing, a video or a article, a new course or something like that. As we talked about before, I'm gathering a lot of information from different sources. So the first thing is to actually start to weave that together. And because of PKM, the best thing is you don't start with a blank page anymore. This is like why Roam Research is the tool that it is, because now I can take all my research and start weaving it together. I never have to start with a blank page. And I'm like, oh, here are all the different resources I have. I want to talk about this thing, I want to talk about this thing, I want to talk about this thing. So inside of Roam, I start like pulling in reference blocks, and then I start creating an outline from that.
What does that outline have to have before you move forward with it?
I like thinking more in a sculptural approach. I put way too much on and then just keep on reducing. For me, it's really just kind of a playground, my outline. It's for me just take all these different things and try to find a thread.
Once the outline is ready, Ryder brings it to his personal favorite writing app.
So I'll have an outline and I'll write a lot in it, and then finally just the designer in me can't help myself. I go into IA Writer, which is just like the most clean. Have you ever used it?
Just briefly, but not much.
It's just a delight to write in because it takes away everything. There's no interface. It's just writing. And then I'll write on that until I need people to look at it, upload it as a Google Doc, and then have people tear it to shreds and then write it again and then publish it, hopefully.
It's almost like the creative process is a loop. It's a circle. It's not like a factory, beginning to end. It's like, it's this iterative loop. The faster you go through the loop, the better. Like, you could slow down and do it more perfectly and refine things, but the improvement is not at any one stage of that circle. It's the frequency, the speed at which you're circuiting that process.
I guarantee no matter what you do, you're gonna get it wrong. The thing is, you can't trust yourself until you've earned that trust from yourself. And you can't earn that trust without action.
Roam Research works best for gardener-style note-takers like Ryder Carroll. To find out which of the 4 note-taking styles you are, and which app you should pick as your own second brain, watch this video next.